So we'll start off today with the usual quick weekly roundup. There's the numbers. I have done pretty badly this week against all of the comparators. I'm down 0.66%, and here's a summary of all the dividends I received. £68.94 for the week. Better than last week, worse than some weeks. But as usual, it's this is the overall picture. That's what really matters. And we can see it all here. GSK has been having a very bad time recently. I can't remember how much I was up, but I was up by quite a bit with GSK at one point. And there's lots of, well, as you can see, I'm at a loss now, which I'm at a loss as to why. BlackRock smaller companies, having mentioned a reasonably good week last week, is now down by 3.75% for this week. And Harmony Energy is another poor performer. And the other thing that happened was on the 1st, which I think was Monday, we got the usual monthly update from Fundsmith. Thankfully, there was no sales or purchases, which means there's less work for me. Mind you, I enjoy it anyway. So there was a couple of discrepancies here in the top 10. On Monday at the time, I had Meta and Novo Nordisk the other way around, but it was so close that I decided it wasn't worth doing a tiny little trade just to make them the correct way around. And exactly the same story for L'Oreal and Stryker. I had them the other way around. But if we look at the numbers now, though, they've actually reversed themselves naturally. Look, L'Oreal's above Stryker, Meta is now above Novo Nordisk, and as you can see there, Novo Nordisk has had quite the I'd call it a correction, really. It seems like the market's got overexcited about the weight loss drugs, and it's just coming back down to earth a bit, I think. Meta's been doing really well. All on the screen at one time for anyone who wants to pause. So this is the time of the year when I would have put out a video anyway, regardless of this weekly video thing, because it's the 6th of October tomorrow. So obviously I can do all of the performance figures for my yearly unitisation now, because obviously all the markets are closed over the weekend. So I've spent a couple of hours this morning doing all of that number crunching, and I've got the results for the year. And let's go straight to the result, and then I'll go through the detail. But yeah, the result is I was winning for most of the year. The blue line is me, and the green line is Life Strategy 100. So even against Life Strategy 100 for a big chunk of the year, I was winning. And then right at the finish line, Life Strategy 100 has overtaken me, which is rather annoying. So if we go into the unitisation here, we can see that for the 12 months from the 6th of October to the 6th of October, my portfolio returned 20.12%. And if we scroll to the right, we can see that Life Strategy 100 got 20.55%. But as I keep saying, the more appropriate comparator is kind of an average of those two, or somewhere in between those two. So I've done reasonably well versus those two, so that's good. This shows how badly I've been doing. So this is from the moment I started tracking my performance in the unitisation spreadsheet. I'm the blue line. The red line is me as well, but that's with taking the dividends out of the performance, so that's why it's a lot lower. This difference here is the dividends that I've taken to spend. But yeah, as you can see, even with like the midpoint of Life Strategy 60 and 80, I'm well behind. And we'll break down that total performance. Well, it's not accurate, because this is just how each of these investments did for the full year, or for the ones that I bought during the year. I've done the performance from the day I bought them, or the first time I bought them. Full screen, there we go. Yeah, so we can see here, let's have a look what's done well. The banks, yes, I remember the banks were doing well, so that's good. 51% up and 60% up for Barclays and NatWest. So that's pretty cool, but they've still done appallingly since I bought them like over 10 years ago. They've still done appallingly. I'm 20% down on Barclays, 13% down on NatWest, I think, overall, when all is said and done. And then these ones that I've bought purposely have been a mixed bag. Pretty flat for Pfizer, but good enough. This is different. It's a bit tricky to work out the performance really because of the total performance because of the currency conversion. So I've done my best, but it's not fully accurate. The fully accurate way was too much work and I couldn't be bothered. But yeah, about 3% up on Pfizer since I bought it. Schroeder Real Estate's done pretty well. It's up about 20% and I've received a load of dividends as well. Same with Next Energy Solar Fund. And then obviously the battery ones are not doing so great. But yeah, any other Oh yeah, Scottish Mortgage is on a bit of a comeback, but you know, still nowhere near recovering from these 2 years. Any other ones that were above? Brunner. Yeah, Brunner's been on a really good run actually. It was one of my top performers the year before as well. 38% this year. That's pretty damn good. I mean, these have done better, but when you consider that Brunner is a diversified portfolio, this is the better achievement really, because this is just luck being in the sector that's had a bounce back. I would say the biggest detractor from my performance relative to the benchmarks are these two. Because even though they haven't got negative numbers like these are much bigger holdings for me. So the weighted influence on my performance is much bigger for these two. International's done much better. Although, you know, things were reversed the year before. So it swings and roundabouts. Biotech Growth again, but it's again, look at the 3 years before though. It's just a comeback really. I just let them sit there. I actually had no idea that Biotech Growth had done that well this year. I don't really pay that much attention to be honest because it's kind of a small holding. But it's nice to see that it's having a comeback. But you know, look at those 3 years. But anyway, they're the comparators anyway. But like I say, really should be comparing it to 17. So I've done about 3% better than my true alternative. So that's the total return kind of summary. Now we move on to what's kind of more important on a day-to-day basis anyway, which is the progress of the income the portfolio is generating. And there's a few different ways I summarise it each year, as you can see in this table. We have the income per unit, which basically strips out the effect of any inflows or outflows into the portfolio or out of the portfolio. So the effect of this £3,000, that 250 quid going into the portfolio, and I mean in terms of the percentage difference year on year, actually these numbers as well from the year before kind of affect the percentage difference. So basically the effect of that and the previous years means that in terms of the natural dividend creating ability of the portfolio, or actually it includes a bit of interest, because you know when the cash is in the investment account before I've paid it out of the portfolio, some of the investment accounts get interest and some of them got put in money markets temporarily and that creates interest. So there's a bit of interest there as well, but the natural income producing ability of the portfolio was 5.72% higher than the previous year. But then if we include, so in terms of actual cash, that's how the numbers change year on year. So it's actually 7.25% up from the previous year. And I mean, a big part of this is it's a little hard to take account of interest that gets paid within these investment accounts. I struggle to think of a way to strip it out. I mean, early on in the process, it didn't make any difference because interest rates were at like zero, so it made no difference really, or very little difference. But as you can see here, we've got here a value of 12,469, which has any account charges. So like AJ Bell and Hargreaves Lansdown, they have account charges. It has those numbers stripped out, but it also has added back in the interest that's the cash that's just sat on the sidelines temporarily. It's got interest, and that's why this number of 12,469 is a few hundred quid different to the total dividend there of 12,252, which and this spreadsheet is just literally the dividends getting paid, totted up, and that only increased by 5.05%. So it's a bit odd, isn't it? But actually, I went to go and check the numbers, and I looked through all of the history of my accounts, and I can actually, well, I started and I quickly realised actually there's a lot more interest getting paid in these accounts before it's exported from the portfolio than I realised, and this 200 odd quid difference, which is part of why these two numbers are higher than this number here of 5.05%, and it does add up. So it's interest rates going up have kind of made this a little bit inaccurate of measuring my portfolio's income generation. But I just can't think of a way of doing it that isn't just massively cumbersome. I'd have to, every time I got interest inside a brokerage account, I'd have to like take it away from the portfolio before I decide what's being paid out of the portfolio as an income, like officially in terms of this unitization spreadsheet. And I just can't be bothered. It's, I've complicated my life enough unitizing, with all these spreadsheets. So I mean, it all comes out in the wash anyway, in terms of this column here being the most important one anyway, because this one shows my total. This is basically how much I can spend each year, and it includes all of these numbers here, but it also includes the interest I've got paid on all of my bank accounts, which is all. I totted it all up here. You don't need to know the details of that, but basically it's a load of interest. £780.96 in total, which has in it subtracted the interest, which is kind of paid in this column here, which is cash that's in the portfolio but not invested. I just kind of keep a running total of that, so I know what's kind of allocated to the portfolio and what's not allocated to the portfolio in my various bank accounts. We can see all of my bank accounts here. I last kind of went into them all on the 1st of May. Sorry, no, 15th of September. I went into them just to check my cash balance, and it's it's not too high, it's not too low, so I didn't make any changes. I didn't add any money to the portfolio. So yes, we can see here that my total income, including interest and everything like that, and including the LISA bonus and the SIP bonus there, 1,720, went up by 10.33%. But I mean, a massive amount of that is because of the higher interest rates, and also a big chunk of it is because my 2 yearly fixes from Atom both paid on the 8th of February. So about 5 months of that is actually from the previous year. But again, it's not something I could go crazy trying to make this fully accurate and like allocating the interest from that exact day to the exact year, regardless of when the interest was paid into the account. It's already cumbersome enough what I'm doing, so I'll just have to put up with the fact that in reality that number there, 3.24% increase from the year before, should be a bit higher, and this number here, 10.33%, should be a bit lower. Because if we did it truly fairly, of like the exact day the interest was accumulated versus when it was paid to me. I monitor my spending to the 3rd of November. Again, that's just a legacy of when I started monitoring my spending. But I've got a pretty good idea of what I'll spend from the 4th of October to the 3rd of November. It's going to be approximately 10,900 quid. So over the full year, it would have given me a savings of £4,000. And there's the value of the portfolio on the 6th of October, 384 grand. And that is an all-time high for the 6th of Octobers, which is nice to see. These CAGRs here are the total, well, that one needs updating, but yeah, they do the yearly returns compounded from, I can't remember exactly change the 9s to 10 because it's a new year. And we can see there that I've got an appalling performance here. If we click into it, the performance is being done from 2017, and I've got an appalling performance of 3.62% per year in total return, which is kind of reflected in this chart here. So that's why this number is so much lower than these other three numbers. But then in terms of my income, I've changed how that's calculated, because long-term viewers will probably not remember anyway, because why would they? But in 2020, I made a strategy change where I didn't just go for dividends, because this year here we're in 11,960. Pretty much all of my portfolio was in dividend-paying investment trusts or funds, and there was no growth aspect to it at all. So in that year, I purposely sold some and I bought some growth investments. So that decrease in the portfolio of the income of 14%, 15%, 14%, that was done on purpose. So when I measure my growth in income, I do it from that year to that year instead of starting from the beginning, because that's a fairer way, because it was a purposeful decision to reduce it, so it's not fair to include that 14% drop. So if we compare it to RPI, which I've got here, I've taken the RPI data from September to August, basically because that's all the data we've got at the moment. So for the sake of this yearly summary, I used that data because it's the closest data we have at the time. Otherwise, we'd have had to wait a couple of months to get the full data, which completely matches up to when I earned this money. So it's close enough. It's just all lagging by a month or two. We want my dividend to grow faster than inflation, don't we, really? That's my plan. But obviously, the COVID effect on inflation has been very high on these. Yeah, it's those 2 years mostly, isn't it? On the three, so RPI, CPI, CPIH, which includes housing costs, those are the 2 years with really high numbers. But if we go from 2020 to this year, we can see that on all three measures, are we losing on all three? So the income, so this is just the portfolio's own power to increase the dividend. We're losing out on all of them. Even the CPIH, the most complementary comparator, it's losing out too. But then if we include the effect of me adding money to the portfolio, I'm beating two of the measures and RPI is still ahead of me. But then obviously if we include the massive increase in the interest that I get paid from my money that's outside of the portfolio, I'm actually winning against all three inflation measures, which is good to see. I mean, my long-term plan is that I want to increase my standard of living gradually each year. So really, I want a good few percent higher in future years. But I mean, if we look at it this year in terms of my spending power, I've gone up 10.33% compared to these three numbers. So actually, we're well on our way to recovery. If I can keep beating inflation by 3% a year, maybe, I don't know, that would be fantastic. I can just get a gradual, because I find the journey is better than the destination in terms of like buying nice things or just generally increasing my standard of living. It's the actual change from one thing to a nicer thing that I enjoy more than the nicer thing itself. So to me, I like that idea of gradually beating inflation gradually and spending more gradually. Although I fail to spend more. Look at this. Oh, mind you, I don't know. I've kind of gone up and down, haven't I? Because that was in my caravan. That was a bit more expensive. I had a car to run, and then the caravan kind of got cheaper because I was staying places longer. And then there was a higher year because I went travelling the world. Well, I say world, the cheap countries. But there was upfront costs that year because obviously it was a whole change of lifestyle. So I was like buying bags to go travelling with. I had to replace my laptop because my laptop was too big and cumbersome for carrying around. So that year was more expensive because of that. And then this year is a lot lower because less of those costs. I've got better at travelling around, knowing how to do it. I've taken the leap and gone on buses instead of flights everywhere. So this year is even less than the first year. And to be fair, that also includes a massive accident I had with my first laptop that I bought. So actually that includes about 650 quid on replacing a laptop that was only 1 year old. So really, for the next few years, I shouldn't have that cost either. So this number could go down, although it shouldn't. I should be doing what I've just mentioned about gradually increasing my standard of living. I should be doing that. But it's just, I find it so hard to spend money. I really do. So I don't know. I'm going to have to think of things that I can spend that I would truly appreciate. So I wouldn't resent the fact that I'm spending money on them. That's what I need to think of. But anyway, yeah, that's just a summary of my income, how it's growing and how it compares to the inflation measurements. Anything else to say? I do not think so. Alright, so I'll see you next time then. Thanks for tuning in. Bye bye.